Hello, everybody. Mike from Southern California again. It's Wednesday, March the 11th, 2020, and you're on the mic. So, today, I would like, taking into account that we're in an election year here, the presidential election is up and running. We're going through all the primaries right now. Now, normally I've committed to not talking that much about politics on my channel here, and I don't necessarily intend to speak as to politics themselves in terms of any. I'm not planning. Don't want to talk here as much about anybody's particular views, whether you're conservative, liberal, whether you're registered Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Constitution Party, whatever. Um, that's not what this video is going to be about. Um, I would like to talk about how we talk about politics with each other. The title of this video is going to be Political Discourse in the Culture Wars because, a lot of times, we've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't like talking politics. They also say you should never talk politics with friends, right? Family and friends. That's just one of the things you don't bring up because a lot of times when you talk politics, it can get pretty heated. You know, um, like I kind of checked in on Yellow Flash's stream the other day where he had on there with him that umbrella, Tug, Gothic Sushi, and Raging Golden Eel. They were all talking about how they don't like to talk politics, and that's understandable. Nobody likes to walk into a furnace, basically. However, I think it's important every now and again to remind ourselves of certain truths. You know, one in terms of how we talk politics, and also make sure we understand, even when we're talking politics and the culture wars and cancel culture and all that, what is it that we're really talking about? Because a lot of times people get heated, nobody really listens, and then it leads to a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of bad situations. So we have this we have certain people get triggered if you don't agree with them on certain things, you, you know, and it essentially becomes, that point just becomes people yelling at each other. So I think there are some things that need to be addressed as we move forward in terms of how we talk politics and how we talk to each other in that regard. And that's what this video is going to be about today. So without no further ado, let me get started here. I think part of the problem a lot of times when people say they don't like talking politics, I think part of the problem is I think people don't always understand what that means. You know, now you know like when we look at like how we hear a lot of these terms in media, like we know that the two main parties are Republican and Democrat, and then you have a bunch of like third parties like Libertarian, Green Party, Constitution, Socialism and Liberation, Peace and Freedom. You have all these differing parties and stuff like that. But let me add, particularly those who are, at least some of the more, probably the five more well-known ones. Um, For those of you who might be registered Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, or Constitution Party, let me ask you this. Do you know if you're registered in those parties, do you know what it means? Do you understand your platform? Do you understand what your party, whatever party you're affiliated with, whatever party you're a part of? Do you understand the tenets of your party? Do you understand the platform of your party? What your party believes in? Because that, I think, that's a core issue right there. A lot of times, some people will like legacy vote. Like some people, when they vote, will say, or when they affiliate themselves with a party, they'll say, well, I'm a Democrat because my daddy was a Democrat, my granddaddy was a Democrat, this, that, and the next thing, or I'm a Republican because my father and grandfather were Republicans, and it was just in our family to be Republicans. You know, sometimes that happens. It's like, but you don't always understand. Well, what does it mean to be a Republican? What does it mean to be a Democrat? What are the tenets of your party? And also, when a lot of times too, when we're giving our political opinions, I think a lot of times we, as a people, I think we get lost in first off in the lack of understanding of the ideologies of our parties. You know, what our parties basically believe in. Do they believe in more government or do they believe in less government? Do they believe in the states' rights over the federal government, or do they believe in the federal government, over the states? Do they believe in a strong central government, or do they believe in a strong states' rights? Those are some key tenets that our founding forefathers were arguing way back in the late 18th century, there, and early 19th century. You know, as we get into it and stuff like that, you know, um, I think I think there are some terms, or there are some misconceptions that need to be addressed here too. First off, a lot of people keep saying that America is a democracy. That is actually false. We're technically what is called a representational republic. There's a difference there between being a democracy and being a representational republic. What a democracy would entail, democracy means that everybody votes. Okay? Um, if we were a true democracy, that would mean every citizen of voting age we would all have to get together in Washington and we would vote on every single issue. So instead of having congressmen, and I'm going to get to that, instead of having congressmen and senators and presidents doing all that, if we were a true democracy, we all would be doing that directly. We would all be directly voting for whether or not we send troops to the Middle East, whether or not we build a wall on the border, whether or not we put more money into infrastructure or into public health or natural. We all would, all. I don't know what the total. I don't have the number, but basically everybody would be voting. So what they decided to do, rather than have everybody vote, what we do it what our country is based on is we're a representational republic. Now, what that essentially means is this: we vote for the people who we feel best represent our values, our personal convictions, and our ideas on how government should be run. We vote people to represent us as a as a people and as a society. That's why we have two. That's why we have two branches of the legislature. We have a House of Representatives and a Senate. The House of Representatives is considered more closer to the people. We all live in congressional districts. We basically, the idea was brought upon was one of the big debates at the when the Constitution was first founded is you had the bigger states wanting to you had the bigger states wanting um, more representation. You had the smaller states wanting less representation. So we came up with a compromise of having the two houses here. So you'd have the House of Representatives, which would have congressional districts, and they would be more in charge of like the more local level representation. Like you vote for whichever when we have our elections, whether it's the primaries or even in the general, you vote for the person who you feel best represents your values and your beliefs on how government should be run. Your congressman um, is your direct representative to issues. You normally, if you have an issue, you normally write your congressman. The Senate represents the people in their entirety as a state. So we have two senators. Basically the idea is you have exact equal representation where you have each state gets two senators, and then you have proportional representation in which the bigger your state, the more it gets represented. The bigger states wanted the proportional representation. The smaller states wanted the equal representation. The idea of the equal representation being regardless of size, you get the same amount of representation. In this case, two senators. The proportional representation is more favored by the bigger states. The bigger you are, the more um, the more power you have. Now, as a way to balance this all out, we elect the president through the electoral college. Now, why do we vote through the electoral college? It's primarily to keep everything in balance, to keep from having the rule of the mob, basically. Without the electoral college, the only states that would have any real power would be California, Texas, Florida, and New York, because they're the four biggest states. But with the electoral college and with equal representation, the farmer in Iowa who is out there providing food not only for his family but everybody else's family has basically the same say as the Hollywood star who everybody sees on TV every week or film or hears their voice in cartoons or animation. The fisherman in Maine has the same power and voice as a tenured Ivy League college professor sitting in his nice home in Massachusetts, smoking his pipe in the fancy robe. The you know the the auto worker who sits there and spends 8 to 10 hours a day building the cars people enjoy driving and stuff like that, providing cars and stuff. they have the same say as the head of a corporation. I know a lot of people don't necessarily believe that because they feel that people with money, there's this whole rich versus poor or rich versus middle class, you know. But really, the way our country is technically supposed to be run is as a representational republic. Everybody's voice is supposed to be heard. And we do that when we vote for our congressmen, when we vote for our senators, and for when we vote for the president. You know, so what that happens is that comes back and that puts the burden on us to do our homework. A lot of people tend to complain that government, oh, our system is flawed. You know, any system of government is going to be flawed. There are always going to be good and bad points to any form of government. Some better off than worse. I think America has, over its history, proven that a representational republic is much more preferable to than a true democracy. Okay, I think capitalism has proven itself to be ultimately more beneficial to people than socialism or communism. You know, basically the children of Marxism. I'm sorry. I know I said I wasn't going to get too much into political ideology here, but um, these are things that need to be said here. You know, the idea is ultimately you do have the power to influence how the nation is run. But if you don't pay attention and you don't follow through, then your voice becomes null in it. You know, a lot of when President Trump was elected, right? When he was elected, well, going back to the 2016 election here, for example, a lot of people didn't want to vote for either Trump or Clinton. There were a lot of people who didn't like Trump. There were a lot of people who didn't like Clinton. A lot of people felt like, oh, it's which is the lesser of two evils. They believe, and people would say that, well, if you vote for a third party, then you're just wasting your vote. You're not wasting your vote by voting for a third party. If if you feel that the two main parties are sending a candidate that does not represent your values and your belief in how government should be run, if there's a candidate in a third party like a libertarian or a green party or a constitution party or peace and freedom or social liberation or Socialist Party USA, whatever one of those parties is, if you believe that a candidate in one of those camps or an independent, you feel that an independent represents your belief, your values and belief on how a government should be run, then you're following. It's not a wasted vote. It's following your personal conviction. You know. Now, as I said, I'm not getting into anything specific. I'm not like specifically pushing one candidate or trying to push one candidate over another or one ideology over another. But I think these things, if you need to hear this stuff and you need to be reminded of this stuff to understand moving the conversation forward. A lot of people, when they say they don't like talking politics, well, what does that mean? What is talking politics? What and I first off, the core matter of the issue is you have to figure out what your own ideology really is. You may be a Republican, you may be a registered Republican or Democrat, but do you know what that means? Do you understand the values and ideology of your party? And do you agree with it? If you're a Republican, have you taken a look at what their ideology is, what as a party they believe in, what they push? Have you looked at it for yourself to see, okay, I agree with this, I agree with this, I don't agree with it. Have you taken a look? Same goes for if you're a registered Democrat. Same if you goes for a registered Libertarian or a Green Party or Constitution Party or whatever other parties there are. The first thing you have to do as we try to move this conversation forward and try to do it in a more civil manner, you have to look in the mirror and see, okay, well, what do I believe? Politically, what do I believe? What ideology politically do I truly believe in? And start with what you're registered as. Go through and look at your own party's platform and see what you agree with, what you don't agree with, and then check out the other parties. That's ultimately first and foremost, you have to understand your own values. You have to understand yourself as a person and what you believe in. You know, the political party you belong to, it's supposed to represent what your value. If you're joining a political party, that basically means that you're saying that you agree with the values and ideologies and beliefs with that party on how it chooses to run government. That's what means. You know, when you're like a Republican, for example, if you're a registered Republican, it means that you generally agree with most of the you may not agree with everything, but you agree more generally with the overall party platform. If you're a Democrat, you probably tend to agree more with the Democrat ideology. But first and foremost, before you move the conversation forward, you have to know who you are. You have to know your values, and then you have to go out and research the parties. Do these values and ideologies of this party and how government run, do they match with mine? If yes, then go ahead and continue with the party. But if no, it's okay to start looking around to see, okay, what other parties are there? Are there any parties that are more in line with my views? You know, right now we have a lot of people who are former Democrats who basically have decided to switch to Republicans because they feel that their party is not representing them. Coming out of high school way back when, I was originally registered as a Democrat, but at 28 chose to switch my affiliation to Republican. I said, now granted, I said I wasn't really going to mention my own political leanings, but the reason I decided to bring it up here is because my views changed, and sometimes that happens as you get older. As you get older and you get a little wider, you get a little more understanding. Well, your views are liable to change. What you may have believed in your youth may not necessarily be the same thing you believe in when you get older, and that happens. People change parties. We see a massive amount of it going on right now. A lot of people who are in the Democrat Party are leaving it because they don't believe that their party is representing them. We had a bit of a exodus in from the Republican Party too when Trump was the nominee. There were a number of Republicans who felt that Trump was not a true representative of the Republic of what they believed their party's values should be, values and ideologies should be. There's even a number of them went from maybe being Republican to Libertarian. You know, but but first and foremost, you have to know who you are and know your values and your ideological beliefs as to how government should run as you move forward. And this applies not just to politics but the culture wars too, because it all intertwined. It's all people say they don't like politics, but in a way, even when we're talking about the culture wars, whether it's like cancel culture or pushing of certain agendas, you know, this is all it all goes back to reflecting of what your personal values and beliefs are. That's a key thing. You know, when we have this political discourse, when we're talking about like culture wars and we're talking about cancel culture and whether or not you know LGBTQ people should have the right to marry each other, or whether or not a child should be allowed to live just because it might be considered an inconvenience, you know, or how we spend our money, whether we spend our money on foreign wars or on domestic issues, you know, it goes back to what you believe your value is, what your own personal values are, and your ideological beliefs. You know, that's really it's not when we're quote unquote talking politics, we're not really talking politics. That's the point I was really going for here. We're not talking politics. We're talking values. We're not talking politics. We're talking values. What do you value? What how do you believe the government should run? Do you believe in more government intrusion or do you believe in less government intrusion? That's not as much politics. That's a value assessment. That's your own personal value assessment. You know, do you believe that every American should have a gun to protect themselves? Or do you believe that Americans are just too ignorant to handle a gun? Do you believe in the sanctity of life, or do you believe in the sanctity of life until it becomes an inconvenience? You know, do you believe in striving for what you want and doing the best you can and not relying on government, or do you believe in being completely dependent upon the government? Do you believe in doing for yourself, or do you believe that people who are better off than you have to you know have to give you things? Those are questions you have to ask in yourself. The thing is that we we are We are not male Americans. We are not female Americans. We are not old Americans. We are not young Americans. We are not middle-aged Americans. We are not white Americans. We are not black Americans. We are not Asian Americans. We are not um, Polynesian Americans. We are not um, Hispanic Americans. We're not rich Americans. We're not poor Americans. We're not elite Americans, and we're not trash Americans. We are Americans. Period. Exclamation point. You want the government to work for you? Take the time to invest in it by making more informed choices as to who you're voting into office. Don't just vote for a candidate just because your daddy is voting for them, or your mommy is voting for them, or your grandparents voted for them. Look into them. Listen to what they say. Is what they say and what they believe match your own values and beliefs? That's how the system works. You have to be a willing participant to do that. You have to put in the time and effort to to know yourself and to know who represents you. And if you take that to heart, we will we will all be better off in the end. And I spent quite a bit of time on that. So let's look at some happier stuff here. That was a pretty serious talk there. So let's look at some happier stuff here. Um, moving forward here. So, um, anyway, so today is March 11th. So it's time once again to do this day in Nietzsche history. On this date in 1970, Moondog, Maine regains the NWA Pacific Northwest title from Kurt Von Steiger in Salem, Oregon, on this date in 1970. I happened on this date 50 years ago, basically. And then on this date 40 years ago, Marvel Comics released on the newsstands the 205th issue of Amazing Spider-Man, featuring Spider-Man, of course, the story In Love and War. 205th edition of issue of Amazing Spider-Man was released on this date 40 years ago in 1980. And I would like to wish a happy 38th birthday to voice actor Robbie Damon. Robbie Damon, of course, known as the English voice of Mamoru Chiba, Tuxedo Mask, and the Viz Media dub of Sailor Moon, as well as being part of the voice acting slash gaming slash comedy troupe Loud, Annoying, and Very Annoying, with his partners in crime, Ray Chase and Max Middleton. So happy 30th birthday to Robbie Damon. And with that, let's bring it to a close here. As if you guys want to check the links below, you can contact me directly through my Discord. You can check out the Discord and join if you'd like. Let's see, what else here? You can direct message me on Discord. I'm also promoting a bunch of different dub companies. You know, check out other works other than, Funimation, or even the LA works. There's a lot of stuff from Canada and from New York that's pretty good too. Also, I'm still promoting the GoFundMe's. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If you have the means to, it's on your heart to do so, please consider donating. If you've already donated, please consider donating again. And if you can't donate, you can still help out the cause by sharing the links, because sharing is caring. after all, and you never know, maybe somebody in your circle of friends might see it and might want to help out too. And if you like this content, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Um, I always look forward to the conversation with you guys as long as they're civil and respectful. I hope you guys got a lot out of this video in terms of information and just some stuff to really think about as you move forward when we're talking like the political discourse and culture wars and all that. So with that, I hope you guys will enjoy this video and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.